Hello, I'm Phoebe Boucher, managing editor at Raven Chronicles Press. Raven is a Northwest literary organization that's been around since 1991. This is a years-long series of episodes called Banned Books Project. Raven will be posting on our YouTube channel podcasts of writers reading excerpts from banned books that are meaningful to them or are of historical or literary importance. Today we have Michael Spence. Michael Spence is an American poet who spent nearly 4 decades as a public transit bus driver in Seattle while cultivating his poetic voice. His unique perspective on the rhythm of the city and the quiet profundities of everyday life informs his work. His book of poems, Umbilical, 2016, was winner of the new Criterion Poetry Prize. Michael, take it over.
Thank you, Phoebe. First of all, thanks for everyone watching this program. I think it's a very important kind of a program to be having, especially now. And some of the comments I'll be making, which will refer to the reasons why I think that. And so I want to thank Phoebe and Raven Chronicles for inviting me to be part of the Banned Books event. And I'm going to be talking about George Orwell's 1984. I see what I consider since it's been perennially banned by one group or another, I see it as sort of a new iterations of old censorship. I mean, it's just everybody has lots of reasons not to like it, and they all come together to try to ban it. But it's a really important book, and I think people need to pay attention to what it said. So I will read some remarks about why I think it's important, and I hope you enjoy them. Excuse me. When I first read 1984, among its many strange and chilling concepts, Big Brother, Doublethink, The Thought Police, Newspeak, The Memory Hole, a small incident stood out for me. While Winston Smith, the main character, ate lunch, quote, in a low-ceilinged canteen deep underground with a sour metallic smell, he was listening to the stuff that streamed out of the telescreen. It appeared that there had even been demonstrations to thank Big Brother for raising the chocolate ration to 20 grams a week. And only yesterday, he reflected, it had been announced that the ration was to be reduced to 20 grams a week. Was it possible that they would swallow that? Yes, they swallowed it, unquote. The relevance of this scene mirrors to me the incredible credulity of many people now that we find ourselves living in a nation run by the double plus ungood Donald Trump. For days, he and his echoers claimed they had no power to return to America a man named Kilmar Abrego Garcia, whom they illegally kidnapped and deported to El Salvador, despite a judge's earlier order that forbade his being deported there. Then, as if they'd never said they could do nothing, the traitor-in-chief said of course he had that power, he just refused to use it. Another element from Orwell's book, reflected in our own modern land, is that Trump's rallies often seem like hour-long versions of the 2 minutes hate, a blast of invective designed to trigger a visceral response in its audience. The main point of both performances is to override an irrational, critical evaluation of what's being pounded into the audience's ears. When the crowd is reduced to a mob, then it can be used by the leader to do whatever he demands. That's how we got all those January 6th rioters to bellow, "Hang Mike Pence." I sometimes think there are people in Trump's orbit, ghouls like Stephen Miller, who scour works like 1984, Mein Kampf, and The Handmaid's Tale, not for cautionary warnings, but to reverse engineer them for blueprints on how to establish a dictatorship in America. Maybe some details from such books were models for the worst of the plans, like Project 2025, whose title seems Orwellian to me, like China's Great Leap Forward. And Trump's and the GOP's abrupt love for Russia over Ukraine, after the party spending years calling the Soviet Union, the evil empire, reminds me of how Oceania, Smith's homeland, would suddenly switch from warring against Eurasia to warring against East Asia. Smith's very job, in fact, was working at the misnamed Ministry of Truth to doctor all the previous news reports so they'd be in sync with the latest, but always allegedly eternal, present reality. If the rewriting task was too large or arduous, he'd memory hole the erroneous accounts. No critical contradiction was allowed to exist. I have a hunch that many who've read 1984 may not remember, as I didn't until I reread it, the term own life, OWNLIFE, one word, own life. Orwell describes this as the urge, quote, to do anything that suggested a taste for solitude, even to go for a walk by yourself, and that it was always slightly dangerous, unquote. I think the word is also meant to underline the idea that one's life should be one's own and not subject to the control of others. So I'd argue that these days, Trump and his sycophants are consumed by the thought that all Americans should measure their lives only by whatever uses Trump and his vile company can extract from them. You have no private value. The self-centered arrogance that seems a main element of Republican leadership now, rather like that of the party of Big Brother, wishes to bend all other concepts, like the rule of law and adherence to the Constitution, to its will. I also think that many MAGA members would happily join a modern version of the thought police. Trump's rancid lieutenant, Stephen Miller, gives every sign of not only wanting to join it, but to run it. Only a few weeks ago, Miller claimed the right known as the writ of habeas corpus, quote, could be suspended in time of invasion, unquote. He even tossed in an unsettled threat, quote, a lot of the move to suspend the right depends on whether the courts do the right thing, unquote. The right wing thing is, of course, what Miller means. He absorbs this arrogance from Trump, who, just as Big Brother can decree what's real, demands the power to declare emergencies without having to be bound by facts or evidence. A recent example is his claim that white Afrikaners are victims of genocide, giving him an excuse to let some of them into our country. But when an administration official was asked if this meant the victims of real genocide in the Congo or Sudan would also be allowed in, she dodged the question with irrelevant blather in order to stay in line with her vindictive boss. A somewhat condensed definition of doublethink is, quote, the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them, and to deny the existence of objective reality, and all the while to take account of the reality which one denies, unquote. It seems to me that doublethink can be the result of being subjected to endless streams of double talk, like that spewed by Fox News and others to hide or rebrand the damage being done by Trump's misadministration. Christy Dogkiller Nome, Trump's head of Homeland Security, recently engaged in this black as white twisting of facts when she claimed that habeas corpus is what permits the president to deport whomever he wants to. Was she lying or just too stupid to know what this basic right is? In either case, like all of Trump's handpicked acolytes, she helps distort the truth. My copy that I used of 1984 is 1977 Signet's classic version, which had an afterword by sociologist and psychologist Eric Fromm. In that, he states, in Oceania's party, the leaders are aware of the fact that they themselves have only one aim, and that is power. To them, power is not a means, it is an end. And power means the capacity to inflict unlimited pain and suffering on another human being. Power then, for them, creates reality, it creates truth. In a footnote, Fromm cites Simone Weil's definition that power is the capacity to transform a living person into a corpse, that is to say, into a thing. The current version of this concept is confirmed in Adam Serwer's 2021 book about Trump's use of power, even in its title, The Cruelty is the Point.
Yeah.
Fromm writes, it is one of the most characteristic and destructive developments of our own society that man, becoming more and more of an instrument, transforms reality more and more into something relative to his own interests and functions. Truth is proven by the consensus of millions. To the slogan, how can millions be wrong, is added, how can a minority of one be right? Orwell shows quite clearly that in a system in which the concept of truth as an objective judgment concerning reality is abolished, anyone who is in a minority of one must be convinced that he is insane. This is Trump's and the GOP's agenda, to destroy truth and objective reality and to invent and enforce their own. In the Orwellian land we are now forced to live in because of the bogus mandate from a mere one-third of all the eligible voters deciding we should, our democracy has been under constant attack from gross incompetence, slavish fealty, and ravening greed. Big Brother and his party would nod and smile. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome, Phoebe. Mhm.
Unfortunately, that book is,
Th-
our Bible right now,
Yeah, really.
Bible
Yeah.
of the United States.
Yes. Yeah. It's incredible. You can
Yeah,
see I mean, there are so many things you can understand why it's being banned by people in power because,
right.
it reveals a lot of the mentality of the people in power. And they wouldn't want to admit some of that stuff, but it's basically what's behind a lot of what they do. And I've thought for some time, and I didn't realize that this was in 1984 from my first reading, but the whole idea about the book by Adam Serwer, Cruelty is the Point for all these people. It's just
I haven't
exercising.
read that one. It is. They're all just very, very cruel people.
Yeah,
I don't get it. And everybody says he's such a jovial guy when you really meet him, Trump.
I
Um,
don't think so. I mean,
Bill Maher, he went to have
I saw that. I saw it.
dinner.
No,
Well, I haven't watched him since, but I'm not
exactly.
shocked.
Me too. I mean, I
Well,
thought,
come on, he's nice to you. What? So what?
yeah. I mean, don't you know? I mean, he must know that Trump would figure this guy has an audience which I normally can't reach.
Right.
So I'll be nice to him. He'll report I was nice to him, and therefore they will infer that some of this stuff about me being a ravening idiot, which he is, isn't true, and it's fake news. And
Yeah.
the thing is that even if Marr understood that, I don't understand why he thought he was not being used rather than the user himself, you
I
know.
mean, I'm sure some of the Nazi commandos, uh,
Yeah,
well, I still
yeah,
think the whole thing about the ordinariness of all these brutal people
yeah,
and Trump, I don't think you could say he's ordinary because he's just, he
yeah,
comes off as so unintelligent.
yes,
And a lot of the Nazi people were not unintelligent. They
no,
were lead,
no,
some of the lead killers.
yeah.
Anyway, that book is still important. I saw a couple versions of the movie. John Hurt played
I
Winston.
haven't seen that one. Yeah, it's supposed to be pretty good
That
though.
was my favorite.
Oh,
With,
okay, yeah,
with John Hurt, great actor.
yeah, he is. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
he died. He's dead now.
yeah,
British actor, the British John Hurt.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, thank you for sharing this. This is a very
Absolutely.
important book, and I do think it's important for people to talk about literature, and especially the ones that are seen as maybe not everybody should read. Everybody should read any book that they want to read.
It won't kill you. I mean, come on, they're words on a
No.
page. To me, that's always been an idea of a kind of a modern version of the idea of voodoo. That you read something bad
Oh,
that's going to
right.
harm you. It's stupid.
Yeah,
Words can lead to bad actions like the January 6th riot, but
right,
they have to be actions to actually be
right.
harmful. Yeah,
Well, I do not have children. I as a kid, I sometimes the librarian at my school said the books I were reading were too adult. That nobody banned me from reading them. My
uh,
parents didn't care what I read.
good,
I read
good,
anything
good.
I want to.
Yeah, mhm.
But just minds need to be open, and
Yeah,
the world of
yeah,
literature needs to help you do that.
I agree completely.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome, Phoebe. Thank you very much. You take care.
Talk to you.